Well, the VDL Top Board and Cascadia Open are concluded. I have David Hood in place of my mortal enemy, Brian Pravel, here to give some wise, sage analysis for a change. This is the DBNI Countdown Show. And David, you were on the stream last night. Thank you for joining us today. Before we start, what are your thoughts on what you saw last night?
What a spectacular opportunity for people who are students of the game to watch end games that we don't often see in different formatted tournaments. We had these unlimited time tournament games, so that allowed people to really play things out and go for the win. And by God, we saw some solo wins last night, Zach.
We sure did, David. I loved seeing it. I loved the drama, the back and forth with two dueling solo threats trying to jockey on the line. We saw a lot of people go for it and one notable person not go for it, not to point any fingers at you, my co-host, David Hood.
No, I know you wouldn't do that. I know you wouldn't do that.
I play nice with my co-host, David. Well, what do you say we get into the top 28?
Let's do it. We've been building for this for months and months.
All right. Coming in at number 1, you may know her as a writer, contributor for the Diplomacy Briefing Champions Corner just about every month. Tanya Krill bore her teeth on the VDL Top Board, covering her pearly white lies with a precious gold medal. She ends the season number 1 in the diplomacy world and will be a force to reckon with in February. Coming in at number 2, it turns out that John Mr. Anderson isn't the one, but he made out with a trinity of strong performances at Liberty Cup, Weasel Moot, and VDL to earn himself an ill-advised sequel at the DBN Invitational. Morgante Peloton rode his way to the top-tier status at VWDC and has been rewarded with some high-resistance training at VDL and Cascadia. We'll see if he gathers dust at the DBNI tournament next month. Rounding out the top 5, we have Bill Hackenbrack. He took a rest, got some sleep this past weekend at Cascadia, and Ed Sullivan did anything but sleep this weekend at Cascadia, winning the dang thing as if he needed to. David, tell us about 6 through 10.
Let's look at 6 through 10, and I see what you did there. You gave me the names to pronounce that you didn't want to try to pronounce. So let's start with Nicolas Sauge, or as I call him, no effing way. You're going to do better than Nicolas in this game. He's one of the old-time masters of the game, a smooth character, and you can talk about your top 5 all you want to. Nicolas Sauge is definitely a favorite to win this whole thing, former world champion that he is. Alessandro Tavani from Italy, an up-and-coming player that's really showed a lot of promise this year. So we'll see if that young Turk from Italy, I don't know if you could be a young Turk from Italy, but by God, we'll see if that young Turk from Italy can play any country in this final bloodbath of the season and see if he can pull something off. Brewmark is not going to play. He's number 8, but he is an online player and has decided not to play, which means, do we want to talk about him anymore? I don't think so.
If you don't need to talk about him.
Nah, Davide Chignoli, who's another player in Italy who I like a lot, but I don't like him anymore. He said he wouldn't play in this thing, number 9, so who cares? Christian Klein, the Scorpion, now coming in at number 10 from Chicago. I think the question on Klein, who won DixieCon this year, but since then has won nothing, is he a one-hit wonder? Is he the 1980s, one-hit wonder channel coming in for diplomacy? We're going to find out during the DBNI.
Well, Christian Klein, if you're watching this, I didn't say it. Hood said it. I didn't say it. It's a bad, a lot of people are saying a different type of hoods are annoying a lot of different people this week. David Hood maybe just rubbed Christian Klein the wrong way. I will go on to
bring it.
11 to 15. Back to some names that we can both pronounce, and I'll pronounce them. Andrei Gribakov has been playing solid, good diplomacy all year long. Put in another good but not winning performance at Cascadia this weekend. And our favorite player on the circuit, everybody's favorite player on the circuit, it's Tommy Tombstone Anderson. That's what we've always called him. ripping his opponents and leaving them 6 dots under the lead seemingly every time he's on the board. Coming in at number 13, Karthik Conniff, 14, Maxime Popov, and 15, you all know her, you all love her, Siobhan Christopher Nolan. We'll see if she can dominate Western theaters during those dark nights in February, or if all this streaming will prove to be the bane of her existence, David. What do you think about our next 5?
Oh, I think our next 5 are some other names that we're going to recognize from this past season of lots of tournament play. Starting at number 16, Jackson Roberts, who just came in second at the Cascadia event yesterday on the strength of a really outstanding Turkish solo in his game over Liam Stokes. Jackson being the 19-year-old college phenom that he is, let's see if he can come in here and beat up on the old men, like Peter McNamara, number 17, right behind him, our first, over from down under. Is he going to be over the hill from down under? We'll find out. Peter McNamara, one of the better players in the world, coming in at number 17. We'll see if he can bring it for the Australian hobby. Tom Mao played in Cascadia yesterday, got pummeled, but he had a lot of good success this year in online play. So looking forward to see him come in here and cut his teeth in the first inaugural DBNI. Farron Jane, there's another phenom that has just broken into the hobby in the last few months and made a couple of top boards, winning a tournament. Way to go, Farron Jane. Sergey Sarrigan finishing off the top 20. Another player we've seen a lot on the stream this year. And I would also say, entering a wonderful club of players with Russian names doing well in every country, including Russia, on the diplomacy board.
Absolutely. Absolutely, he has. Looking at our next 5, people don't often bring this up, but hunter-catcher literally translates to apex predator. And the man of many names is starting to look hungry, David, having sat out of every tournament since Tempest. Coming in next, it's Teckles. He is in the top 28, but has rejected the invite to the big dance. Are your feelings hurt, David? Because
I do not handle rejection well. I do not handle Teckles very well.
When you make your grandiose invitation to the big dance publicly, that also means you get rejected publicly, and that's what's happened to us at the Diplomacy Broadcast Network. Next up, Natty Schaefer, Matthew Krill, and Russ Dennis, a menacing trio to round out the top 20. Don't let their position on the board fool you. Russ Dennis will solo every time he draws England. It's just a matter of whether or not he draws England.
Speaking of solos, Matthew Krill just had one yesterday in Cascadia, launching him to 3rd place in that tournament. We have got some hot players on this tour and hot players going into DBNI, don't we, Zach?
We sure do. And amazing that a solo yesterday got him 3rd place. Not nearly good enough, Krill.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, unfortunately, I stabbed him in the morning game at yesterday's Cascadia, so you might say it's my fault. But nevertheless, he's going to make the DBNI, and good for him.
Good for him.
No one going to number 26, Andrew Goff, some guy from Australia that I think's played once or twice. But unfortunately for Andrew, who's actually a spectacular player, he's not going to play in the DBNI, so no more about him. Riaz Varani. Now, there is somebody who's also, I would say, a sleeper agent. He is ready to come out from number 27 and maybe get up to number 1. He's certainly got the tactical chops for it. He's a gunboat specialist. We'll see how he does in the DBNI coming up in the next few weeks. Jordan Connors. Now, here's a guy who some people might not know Jordan Connors. He is a complete phenomenon in online play, goes by the moniker Conk, C-O-N-Q, and is a spectacular player. We'll see how he does in the virtual face-to-face setting. He's done well, okay so far, but he's coming in here in qualifying for this on the strength of his online play. Conrad Woodring. Here's a player that I've literally known since he was a young teenager, and he is a spectacular player, now lives overseas, but cut his teeth on the East Coast Diplomacy Tour, and he is ready for some action, let me tell you. Marcus Zylstra, one of our favorite people on DBN and involved in organizing lots of things. So he, Captain Meme Online, is ready to step out from behind the shadows as an organizer and into the tournament. So, Marcus, hope you can make that work out for you.
Sure hope so as well. And we're thankful to have David Hood here, the diplomacy historian of the hobby. He can tell you anything you want to know about any of these players, especially Conrad Woodring.
Actually, I can tell you a lot of things Conrad doesn't want you to know about Conrad Woodring. We'll see. We'll see whether I decide to do that.
Yeah, keep an eye out for the Diplomacy Broadcast Network's new gossip show, DMZ, coming at you live every Monday. As we go on to our bubble players who will get in because of players in the top 28 dropping out. Estacio Rauli has been living on the bubble all year long. It's been a will he, won't he, can he get in? He comes in at 31, which, according to the letter of the law, would not have been enough. But as we all have known all year long, not everybody is going to accept this invite, and Estacio Rauli will get in to the DBN Invitational from his Nexus season 6 performance. And I believe he will be a competitive player at that lever. The online players have done very well transitioning into virtual face-to-face. I think he will as well. But here is a couple players who could have snuck in, and I guess they were too honorable to accept their backdoor entrance. Napoleon of Oz and Greg Matthews, 32 and 33, will not be playing at the DBN Invitational. They were extended the invite, but they have passed the torch to a couple of deserving players in the eyes of some. Ben Kelman and Craig Marr sneaking in the last 2 spots, assuming nobody else drops. These will be the last 2 spots. Craig Marr, famous for winning the Jason Mastbum of the Year award in the Virtual Diplomacy League for a vicious stab of Siobhan Nolan in our December games. Ben Kelman finished 8th at VDL, just 1 supply center short of qualifying for the top board. And I was worried that he'd pull up just short in DBNI as well. I'm glad to see him making it.
Yes, I called Ben and also ran on an episode of Deadline News for DBN. He looks like he is going to be in the running for this one. And I got to say something about my friend Craig Mayer, a practicing physician. Therefore, who better to know how to put the knife in than the doctor of destruction, Craig Mayer, who slips in to the DBNI Invitational. We will see whose story that is going to turn out bad. Really bad for somebody.
It will turn out bad for somebody. And speaking of turning out bad, should we talk about these players who are just on the outside looking in, number 36 through 40?
I don't see how we could avoid talking about them, honestly.
We can't avoid talking to them, and how different it could have been for Brad Blitzstein, who had a relatively stable position at Cascadia last night in Austria before an NMR. Was it only one? Was it 2 NMRs? At least one devastating NMR.
I think it might have been 2, but 1 or 2. Brad, you got to play in order to win. You got to play.
Brad is an old school player. I'm sure he was trying to write his orders out with a pad and pencil yesterday at various points.
He was such an old school player. He may have been chiseling on a pad like the Flintstones. Might have been what he was doing.
Oh, he'll put them right next to those old copies of Diplomacy World with David Hood hobby historian articles.
Yep.
Jonathan Saul, Jason Mastbum, David Roberts, Liam Stokes rounding out the first 5 out, and Liam Stokes could taste it last night at, what was it, 16? Did he get up to 17 centers even? Chasing a solo as England and got stopped by Jackson Roberts, who instead took the solo. What a swing for Liam Stokes, who would be in the DBN Invitational Tournament had he managed to complete that solo.
Yes, and speaking of the Roberts family, Jackson gets in. His dad, Dave Roberts, not in. So that's an amazing situation, given the fact that it was Dave who made the top board of that other tournament, and Jackson missed that one. So maybe a little father-son rivalry going on here, and the son's got the advantage right now.
The son has seized the initiative. David won the battle, and it appears his son Jackson has won the war.
And I think we cannot have this conversation end. We cannot end the episode of Countdown without talking about who got mass bombed. And it was Jason Mastbomb got mass bombed. He is out.
out. What a turn of events. His mast bombed himself.
Well, when you build a fleet Trieste as your first build as Austria at Cascadia yesterday, I'm not sure what else you expected.
It is certainly a masked bummer that we won't be seeing him in February, David.
Yep. And no soul for Jonathan Saul either. One of my friends from Colorado played with in the 2001 World. You knew I was going to bring history into this. First played with Jonathan in 2001 at the World Diplomacy Champion or the North American DipCon. Great guy, total failure. Could not get in the DBNI.
David versus Saul is tale as old as time.
That's true. That's true.
Well, David, thank you for joining us on the DBNI Countdown Show, the final one before the big dance, where we will no doubt see your face quite a bit in the month of February, for better or for worse. Do you have any final thoughts as we close the book on the 2020 circuit and look forward to the great month of February?
Well, we've been talking about the bubble for the last several episodes of Countdown, you and Brian, and then me in the last time we talked about this. Lots of bubble talk, lots of bubbleology. Now the bubble has burst for some of these folk, and it's too bad for them. But now the rest of them, the top 28, go into the DBNI. We'll see how many of their bubbles get burst in the next few weeks.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Thank you to our guest bubbleologist and Deadline News anchor, an all-time great of the hobby, David Hood. And viewers, we will see you in 2 weeks for the start of the DBNI Invitational. Make sure you tune in right here on the Diplomacy Broadcast Network.